Hi, and welcome back to our Organization Behavior Podcast. Today I want to talk to you, or I should say finish our discussion of motivation theories. We're going to start with three cognitive theories, those of expectancy, equity, and goal-setting theory, and then we need to segue into those of behavior. Expectancy theory is actually one that I think works reasonably well in the workplace. It's got some good research support. What we're trying to look at here is how the environment and the person interact to induce motivation. That people choose among different courses of action to make those choices based upon preferences for outcomes. So, our choices are rational. What we're trying to do here is create, it's a multiplicative idea, if you will. There are three basic variables. The first two of these are expectancies. The first of them is the expectancy that given a desired level of performance, the goal can be achieved. Each of these, by the way, is based on a probability, and probabilities are always expressed on the idea from 0 to 1. So the effort performance expectancy is the belief that effort leads to the desired level of performance. That is, given a certain level of effort, I can indeed attain the goals. For example, if I asked you to break the 3-minute mile, you'd have to say, well, sorry, can't do that, and therefore your expectancy would be 0. And being that this is multiplicative, 0 times 0, you know how that goes out. Your effort would be 0. The second expectancy is the performance expectancy linkage. That is, given the desired level of performance, do you expect to receive the reward? Fairly straightforward. The final of these is the idea of valence. Valence is the value that we put on the given reward. That is this something that we actually want? So, our three components, expectancy, performance link, our performance goal link, and our link between the goal and the reward, or the goal and the reward, and finally this idea of valence. So, if I really like the reward, give us a 1 there. If I can expect to attain the goal, and if I trust you to give me the reward at the end of this, it's 1, 1, 1. Our expectancy, therefore, our motivation level is 1. Very straightforward, works very well. A guy by the name of Victor Vroom came up with this, which I find fascinating for an idea of motivation. It just seems kind of curious. Outcomes, the expectancies here can be internal, they can be external. Basically, what people want to get out of this idea. So, basically, find a task that people can actually accomplish. 2, give them a reward that they value. And 3, keep your word. Simple as that. If you do that, you will motivate your employees. So, from a managerial point of view, it's basically pretty simple. So, move on to equity theory. Well, equity theory is focusing in on exchange relationships. That is, given a certain level of performance vis-a-vis the other people that I work with, what does my reward look like? So, the scenario. You're in your little cubicle. You look over one day, there's your work partner's pay slip. You find out they're getting paid more than you are for the same job, for the same level of work effort, at least the same level that you think is being given here. What's likely to be the outcome of that? Well, it's going to move us into the idea of positive equity or negative equity. The fact is, we feel as if we're being shortchanged. On the other hand, conversely, if we look over the cubicle wall and we see our neighbor's paycheck and they're making less money than we are, that puts us into a situation of positive equity. Now, let's be rational here. I like equity theory. I mean, it's got some proof behind it. How many of us are really going to be bothered by a situation of positive equity? Are we going to go, well, I really should give some of this money back to the organization? I don't think it's going to happen. So, the basic problem that I have with equity is it requires knowledge that you generally, might not share with employees. I mean, granted, when I worked for the University of Wisconsin system, my salary was published in a newspaper once a year, part of the open records laws back in my home state. But that's okay. I didn't mind that because I really don't worry about what other people are doing. But for some people, it becomes an obsession. And if it's bothering them, you have a problem as a manager. That's why we create these massive systems of rules and regulations so that employee A and employee B are being paid exactly the same thing for exactly the same job. Because we don't want our employees getting into a situation of negative equity. Because what does negative equity do? Well, it causes some rather bad reactions. I mean, the one most likely to occur is this idea of withdrawal of labor. I'm just going to sit back and take it easy from now on, because if they're not working that hard, they're getting paid the same as I am, I'm not real pleased with that, so I'm going to withdraw labor. In more extreme situations, absenteeism goes up, people will take more sickies, and in truly extreme situations, anger might boil to the surface, they'll quit their job, and now you've got a position to fill. So what you want to do is try to reduce those feelings of inequity. Now, that leads us, Latham and Locke looked at this, and well, there's some other stuff happening out here. Came up with goal-setting theory. Goal-setting theory was basically trying to look at what kind of goals employees are more likely to reach. And what Latham and Locke did was start digging into what people really wanted. So, think about MBO, management by objectives. I mean, Peter Drucker came up with this probably 50 years ago, as I recall. So, what we want to look at is when we're sitting down with our employees to do their annual review, we're coming up with objectives for them. What is the best way to go about this? Well, some of the things they found important was, of course, the idea of goal specificity. That is, the more specific the goal, the more likely it is that our employees will attain the desired outcome. So what, how much, when? Not, we want you to improve your performance next year. Well, what the hell does that mean? That's our problem. What we'd like you to do is raise your sales next year by 11%. And you need to do that by the end of the fiscal year. That's pretty clear. I mean, there's no ambiguity there. People know what's expected of them, hence they go and do it. Latham and Locke argued that acceptance of the goal was important, but how one gets acceptance is not. That is it by fiat, this is your goal? Or is it by sitting down and working it out? But other research has shown that if people participate in their goal-setting exercise, they're going to be a bit more motivated towards attaining that goal. So what we're trying to do here is make sure that we have these goals and how we set them. Our final theory here is behavioral theory, behavior modification. You might recall B.F. Skinner in the 50s taught pigeons to peck at a mirror, and by doing so, the feed came out of the feeding tube, and he was able to make sure that they pecked at that mirror regardless of whether they got fed or not, because now it became ingrained behavior. Well, behavior mod went out of fashion after the 50s because guess what? We had the 60s, and it looked too much, like manipulating people. Well, it came back into OB for some very good reasons. One, it always worked. That's part of our problem. I mean, we hadn't been talking about a perfectly good theory that we knew worked just because it was socially unpopular at the time. So we're rational people in business schools. We brought it back in largely through the efforts of Judy Kamaki. And Judy's I think one of her real contributions, outside of the serious scholarship she's done, is to rename it from behavior mod to OB mod, organization behavior modification, and bring it back in. What we're looking at here is contingent reinforcement. When your employee does something good, you praise them. Pretty simple kind of process, right? And there's all kinds of reinforcement size, reinforcement deprivation. None of that is terribly important. Although you should be aware that positive reinforcement is much stronger than negative reinforcement. And those of you who are parents already know this. Those of you that even have a pet, you can only kick the dog so many times. You got to give them that doggy biscuit for now and then. So what you need to focus in on here is catching your employees doing a good job and making sure you let them know, which is unusual given that we know from our experience in the workplace, it generally happens the other way around. You can wander around some workplaces for decades and no one ever says, good job. But just screw up once, and next thing you know there's letters flying and there's meetings, which is exactly the wrong approach to take according to simple psychological theories. The other things we can use this for is for shaping of behavior. We're going to change a person's behavior gradually over time. So what we do is realizing it cannot happen in one step. So we set up a reward schedule. We try to shape that behavior. We're going to withdraw other incentives that are going on to try to bend their behavior back towards our desired norm. So if they want to learn a new procedure, we can't do it all at once. We're going to do it, at one time. And the other thing we have to remember, as I said, is that, positive reinforcement is normally preferred. Negative reinforcement also has some side effects. Yeah, people will stop, but it doesn't really cause them to adopt a desirable behavior, because now they're at that very basic level where they're avoiding it to avoid punishment. And if the punishment's not present, it'll creep back in. And there's also very emotional reactions to being punished. Not very surprising there. Well, that's what I have for you today. I hope you've got a better understanding now of how we motivate employees, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks much.